Yes.
Thank you. So welcome everybody to this online meeting of the West Yorkshire Police and Crime Panel. I'm Al Garthwaite and I'm a councillor from Leeds and the chair of the panel. And I'll go around and ask everyone to introduce themselves in the order that I can see you on the screen. And if I make a mistake on a name, please do correct me. It's not my intention, but these things can happen. To start with, the Mayor of West Yorkshire, Tracy Brady.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to be here.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, Alison Lowe.
Hello, Alison Lowe, Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan. Paul.
Sorry, I was muted. Also living from Bradford, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Lake.
Morning, Trevor Lake, Independent.
Thank you.
Trevor Lake, Independent.
Councillor Sakal. Muted.
Sorry, I'm okay now. Yeah. I wasn't on the video. Councillor Mohan Sokon, Yerkali Council. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know that you have to leave at 11, don't you, today? So we're aware of that. And we wish you well on your flight to India.
Thank you. Just for 3 weeks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Some of us are envious.
Julie R.
My name's Julie Reid. I'm Head of Policing and Crime.
Thank you. Councillor Kingstone. Councillor Kingstone, we should have welcomed you as a newcomer to the panel. You're very welcome here. Councillor Courtney has unfortunately had to step down owing to too many other commitments, so you have stepped in.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Councillor Anne Kingstone for Skirkett Ward in Colesdale.
Thank you. Councillor Tennant King.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Tennant King from Wakefield Council.
Councillor Smith.
Councillor Anthony Smith, Councillor in Lake Kirklees.
Ian Y.
Morning, everyone. Ian Yates, Acting Head of Policy Delivery, Policing and Crime. Going to just say, as well, as part of the Policing and Crime induction process, we provided 2 staff along with us, Neil and Sonny, who will introduce themselves. We also actually have a paper coming for the next panel.
Okay, so Neil and Sonny, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Good morning. So Neil Hudson, the Policy Manager for Vision Zero. As Ian said, we will be putting forward the road safety paper at the next panel.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Sunny Williams. I'm a Policy Assistant for Vision Zero and I'll be working alongside Neil.
Thank you. So, Samantha.
Sorry, I'm struggling with doing the live stream as well. I'm Samantha Wilkinson, Police and Crime Panel Officer.
Sykes.
Hi, Jo Sykes. I'm an independent member of the Police and Crime Panel.
And Fiona.
I'm Fiona Bernardo, Panel Support.
Councillor Ali. Councillor Ali, you're muted.
Yes, Councillor Ali here, from Wakefield Council.
Thank you. Is that everybody? Is there anyone I've missed out?
Amanda Carter, Leeds.
Right.
Listen to hear from the Combined Authority Director of Policing and go to place.
Thanks. Oh, I see what I've done. Sorry about that. And Councillor Sharp.
Morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Nicole Sharp from the City Council.
Right. Anyone else I've missed out? 3 people have raised their hands, but I can't see Wendy.
Hello everyone, Wendy Stevens from Research Manager for Policing and Crime.
Thank you. And then Sharon Fraser.
Good morning, everybody. Sharon Fraser from Wakefield Council, legal advisor to the panel.
And John Robbins.
John Roberts, Chief Constable, West Yorkshire Police, and also with peers.
Daniel Ware, Superintendent, Head of Change of West Yorkshire Police.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Lyburn.
Good morning, Melissa Lyburn, Manager of Labour Bins Office at the Combined Authority.
Thank you. You'll have to bear with me. I think this might happen throughout. And also, while chairing, I'm looking at the screen. I'm also looking at my notes. I can't also look at the chat. So if anything comes up in the chat, Sam or Fiona, could you please indicate to us if it's something that needs to be shared with the whole panel?
No problem.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now we go on to the apologies for absence. And I understand we have 2 apologies. Councillor Nasir and Councillor Cooper. Any other apologies that have come in? Thank you. Now we need to approve the minutes from the 3rd of February, which, as you'll recall, was the precept meeting. Does anyone have any issues of either accuracy on the minutes or issues that they want to bring up that aren't going to be covered in the agenda? I'm not seeing anyone, so therefore the meeting minutes are approved. Thank you. Moving on, any urgent items? Mayor, Deputy Mayor, anyone else have any urgent items that you would like us to consider? No? Fine. Anyone? This is item 4, members' declaration of interest. An opportunity for panel members to verbally declare any interest on any items on the agenda. Does anyone have any such interest to declare? No. Thank you. So we move on now to the performance management report. And before we embark on panel questions for this, I'd like to give the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor an opportunity to make any comments about this.
Thank you so much, Chair, and we'll struggle through this meeting. Thank you very much for doing your bit as well to keep us all corralled. Before I start the comment, can I just say regarding the recent sad murders that you've seen, we've experienced a number of high-profile homicides across West Yorkshire where knives have been involved. Obviously, I can't comment on live and ongoing investigations, but I'd just like to take this moment, if I may, Chair, to express my sincere and heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims and communities affected. It's really imperative we continue to work in partnership to avoid those further tragedies, and I'm determined to change behaviours and attitudes around carrying knives and access to them. You all know our violence reduction unit, for which I've got responsibility as a number of interventions, research projects, programmes underway to prevent and reduce these incidents across our community, hand in glove with the dedicated enforcement approach of Operation Gemlock, which is making a real difference. And likewise, my Safer Communities Fund, taking cash confiscated from criminals, bringing it back into grassroots groups and organisations, specifically addressing the drivers behind knife crime. And finally, you'll be aware our Violence Reduction Unit has recently published its needs assessment and response strategy, and I'm confident this will take us on the right path, closely aligned to my police and crime plan. So I just wanted to say that if I could. Thank you so much, Chair. Okie dokie. So performance monitoring. The performance monitoring report looks at the third quarter of the year, October to December 2022. At the last panel meeting, you'll remember members asked the national comparisons to be included where available, and this report has included those comparisons where possible. Priority 1, supporting victims and witnesses. You'll see from your pack, you can go through them and I will take that as read. Supporting witnesses, victims and improving criminal justice outcomes. The victim satisfaction was discussed in the performance scrutiny meeting with West Yorkshire Police. The Chief Constable stated he believed the overall figure was a reflection of the national confidence in policing. Currently, there's no national comparison, but the Home Office are currently out to tender for a national satisfaction telephone survey provider, and the results should be available in the autumn. I'm really proud that we have excellent call handling, and those figures are shown in 1, 2, and 4. This data is available on the police.uk website and shows the priority of West Yorkshire Police to answer those calls as soon as possible. And let's not forget, there's also a number of seconds lag while BT put the call through. So we are handling those calls very swiftly. Improving investigations and outcomes is discussed in detail later on in the victim and witness paper that will follow with work of the local criminal justice board. Priority 2, keeping people safe and building resilience. Some of the work of the Force Cyber Team and Economic Crime Unit have mentioned at 2.2, and this work is linking with other areas such as domestic abuse to increase awareness. The work with repeat victims of domestic abuse is highlighted with the very welcome success of the CARA programme that's discussed in 2.3, and the national report contains a quote from our Deputy Mayor about the way the programme is working in West Yorkshire. Trying to stop that repeated behaviour is the point of it, and it seems to have be having an impact. As previously mentioned, the Stalking Coordination Unit is now up and running in West Yorkshire Police, and that was discussed in our performance scrutiny meeting. It now works in conjunction with the Stalking Advocacy Service, funded from my office, and recent numbers are 555 referrals, which just shows me that there was a desperate need for this service. Priority 3, safer places and thriving communities. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, Chair, homicides are in the news at the moment in West Yorkshire, and there has been an increase overall, but in comparison to our most similar forces, our police force sits mid-table, as you can see in 313, and this has been the subject of a recent HMIC FRS thematic review. And it is pleasing to see, but we are not complacent, that knife crime is starting to reduce in West Yorkshire, and this is welcome in light of current incidents. The latest picture for antisocial behaviour, something I know as councillors you are very alive to, is 3.42, and understanding the increasing crime types against the reduction in incidents is still a focus. It is a complicated picture, with work taking place to triangulate with partners to give us clarity. Neighbourhood crime has increased, although it's not back to 2019 levels. The data shown at 3.56 shows the increase in West Yorkshire is lower than in some similar areas. And overall, the proportion of the workforce from ethnic minorities at 7%, but officers are currently above this at 7.7%, although staff numbers are lower at 5.7%. There is still an increasing trend and shows the outcomes of us prioritising this, working with West Yorkshire Police. Priority 4, responding to multiple and complex needs. The Violence Reduction Unit continues to focus on early intervention and prevention, and the numbers impacted at 4.1 are a testament to this work. And this is going to be part of a more detailed paper that you'll be able to see next month. The missing person figures looks at numbers missing per 1,000 population, and only slight disparities between districts, which could be down to population distribution as well as other causes. Drug-related crime and service referrals form part of the recommendations from the PCC review. That's highlighted in 4.3. And the first meeting of the SPOCs from each district for West Yorkshire Combating Drugs Partnership took place in February. This looks to ensure West Yorkshire has a cohesive approach to the monies allocated to the region, as previously discussed from the Harm to Hope review. I hope, Chair, that this report shows the continuing influence of the Police and Crime Plan to drive our priorities. And the Deputy Mayor and I use every opportunity to highlight the work here, both in the region and nationally. And it was very pleasing to be part of a mayor's meeting with the Labour Party to talk about our work here in West Yorkshire. And if we are to see a Labour government, how we could also have influence going forward in that regard. I welcome questions, Chair, and Alison and myself very happy to take them.
Thank you very much. You have touched upon some issues that I know in our pre-meeting we did want to ask questions about, but it may still be that panel members want more detail on those. So I'll go through looking at the questions that people wanted to ask, and it may be from what you've said that there are further questions. Before I start on those, though, Councillor Sakal, did you?
Thank you, Chair. The mayor has said about the knife crime. We are talking about knife crime for a long time, not only West Yorkshire, on the West Yorkshire, but on nationally as well. But mayor has said that the knife crime has reduced, some reduction there. But public still feel fearful about the knife crime when they talk about that, especially in the area, very deprived area in West Yorkshire. So I just want to know what strategy the West Yorkshire police use. How do they try to reduce the knife crime? Either they think they will be controlled fully one day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That seems like that's a question for John. But very happy to take it on about numbers and so on, if necessary.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we've got a violence reduction unit that's been running for a number of years now, partnership approach, and we've talked about that many times. Part of that is the enforcement activity around Genlock, which is our primary on the street-based activity around reducing, and they've seen huge successes in taking knives off the streets, finding people with knives. We're working in partnership with other agencies, most especially we need to do work with local authorities, councils, with the reduction of youth-based provisions in all of the council areas, and with education as well, because a lot of these issues stem from amongst young people, issues ongoing in schools or to do with exclusions from schools. And I can't say too much around ongoing cases, but it's clear that exclusion still does play a part. Parents, communities have all got a part to play around urban street gangs and the promotion and the support and the acquiescence of people allowing an urban street gangs to go on in their communities. So it's a holistic, wide approach that will not be solved by policing alone, but all of the indicators are in the right direction. But I accept exactly what you say about people's fear. So one of the previous homicides in Kirklees, where there was a vigil for a young man who was murdered outside the school, we stopped and searched people on the way to that vigil who were carrying weapons and knives. So we cannot enforce our way out of this. Communities, parents, society have got to make it wholly unacceptable to be involved in and condoning knife crime. So we're doing a whole host of work that we're very proud of, but we're absolutely determined and resolute in our view that it's only worthwhile if there's less victims. So far, we're pleased to report there are, but it's still too many, as the Mayor's pointed out.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sakal, if that's okay, could you take your hand down? Please. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And of course, we remember thinking about victims and so on, that for every sad fatality or injury, there are a whole lot of victims, family, friends, and the community that suffers through all this, as we know. Moving on to the actual report, on point 1, Mr. Lick, you had a question around the satisfaction.
It's actually on 3.1.1, Chair, so
3.1.
it's page 18 on the chart.
Okay.
The reduction of the number of homicides priority. So clearly, we've seen a 50% increase, which I alluded to in the summary there. There's nothing in the comments box on the page 18. There is a reference further down, page 90, but it's not really clear where that increase has come from. It's clearly a significant increase. In my view, you can't go into the detail of it, but just wondering if we have a bit more analysis there, a bit more breakdown perhaps of where that increase has come from.
Yes, very happy to provide that. I don't know if I am surprised that there is no comment in the box. Actually, I don't know if Wendy wants to come in there, or would it be Wendy that would address that? Wendy?
Sorry, yes. Sorry, I couldn't get off mute there for a moment.
No, it's talked to us this morning, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yeah. I mean, we discussed homicides at the last performance scrutiny meeting, talking about the fact that the increased homicides in London, and we usually see that moving up the country, and I think that's what's been happening. There is going to be national breakdowns of this, and I wanted to put it into this report, but it's not currently in the public domain. So yes, definitely we can break it down more in the next report for you, and do those national comparisons also.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful. Thanks very much, Wendy. And just whilst I'm on the microphone, so we say well done on the hospital admissions and the intervention on in other reducing knife crime. It's clearly heading in the right direction. It's early days, but I think that's a really good result. The multidisciplinary group working across West Yorkshire, so that's a very good result.
Just if I may say, Chair, as well, that yesterday you will have heard the West Yorkshire Police had a really good result on what they call I'll come back to it. I'll find it in my notes. I'll come back to it. But you may have heard it was leading the news that there's a real intervention around drug groups and organised crime, and that there was 38 vulnerable young people and children that were protected from this drugs bust, and that's very complicated work with massive resources to keep people safe. I think 55 people were part of it, and the county lines work is just really intensive, and then you disrupt the drugs network, and then more violence comes out of it as there is a vacuum of people trying to get into that. So it's complicated stuff, but I'm really pleased to see that good news story of great policing was leading the news yesterday locally. Thank you. I've obviously had a brain fog there. Thank you, Alison.
No, and it's okay if I ask that. Now crime is going down. We're not complacent, but just looking at Section 18 woundings with weapons, with knives, that's down 17.5%, but it's 97 victims. And but for an inch here or there, they could have been homicides. And so the homicide figures are incredibly complex, because it's about is it a serious injury or is it a homicide? And obviously the mayor has been asking, you won't know this, but the mayor has been asking for domestic homicides to be reported to her. So we're keeping a track of all domestic homicides and understanding those. And so we separate out the domestic homicides from the other homicides that are taking place, although we've got an oversight of all of them, of course.
Yeah, that seems a very good system. Yes, and congratulations generally on
success of the course and yourselves getting all these good outcomes. The next, moving back to the satisfaction figures, Councillor Sharp, you had an issue.
I did, thanks, Chair, and apologies everybody for the building work that's going on next door in the background. That's just started at 10 o'clock. In relation to the satisfaction survey that's going to be led by the government, we've been informed in the pack that the results will be brought to us in the autumn. Will we be able to see how the results differ from what's gone on before, as well as the actual results? Thanks.
Is it okay for me to answer that, because I've had a further conversation with Wendy since the papers came out? Yes, so this piece of work that the government's commissioning is at very early stages. We were led to believe it would be out in the autumn. It may be later than that, but you know, there's lots of delays out there. So as soon as we know when this piece of work will be commissioned and undertaken and the data comes out, of course we'll work with you to make sure you get the information you need. I can't promise that you'll get exactly what you want because we don't know what the questions are yet. We don't know if because we all collect different data in different ways, so it may not be, you know, apples and apples, but we'll try and break it down as much as we can. Wendy's a whiz, so she'll get some information that's useful to you, but at this minute in time we're a bit in the dark.
Thank you.
And John's got his hand up, by the way, Chair. I don't know if you can see him.
I'm about to come on him. I suspect it might be the previous one. But Councillor Sharp, did you want to come back on that question at all? What we answer?
No, that's fine, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, John. Chief Constable.
No, the moment's passed. It's fine. My apologies for not lowering it.
Oh, fine. Okay, thank you very much. The next question is one that I wish to ask. I note the increase in positive outcomes for rape and serious sexual offences, with Bradford and Purfleet recording the highest increases. This is good. I mean, it's still not brilliant, but it's definitely a really good step in the right direction. When we can see that West Yorkshire has the highest positive outcomes for rape from all forces. I'd just like to ask, how has this come about? Because it's obviously a very good thing.
I think it's teamwork, Chair. I think it's the vision of ourselves matched with the talent and the determination of West Yorkshire Police to be a champion in this area and to work with partners, because you can't do this on your own. So it's about having a focus and an intent to create better outcomes. But I don't know if Alison or John would like to say what magic we're weaving here. I don't know.
Well, it definitely is John's moment of glory, but I do think we should understand that this is, you know, really good policing techniques. This is really good application of the Satirian Bluestone recommendations, the RASO guardians that we've employed here for many years, and that dedication from our force to get it right. And I think it's right that John should take a bit of the glory here and John take over.
No, there's no glory, because there's the prosecutions and the bringing to justice of offenders is still nowhere near where we want to be with it. But I mean, you know, without going on too long, we've taken a long-term approach about this. We've recorded offences properly, so we've got a great aspect of what we're doing. We've worked really well as the Mayor and Deputy Mayor said in partnership with one of the finest sexual assault referral clinics in the country, and we've built that up over many years. We've got some great working with the judiciary about what we call Section 28 evidence, about how people can give their evidence without being directly in court as a vulnerable victim. We have focused for many years in West Yorkshire on the perpetrator and not the victim. We focused on the people who are committing the offence. We've built our digital forensic units, our forensic capabilities, our investigative capabilities. We've built over many years our safeguarding response and trained, specialised our officers. We have more frontline trained officers, the initial attendants and sexual offences and rape offences for those golden minutes and golden hour principles. And then we followed that up with some of the best practice acclaimed rape and serious sexual offence specialist prosecution teams. So it's a coordination across all activities in all parts of the force, focusing on serious sexual offences and rape. But I'll finish where I started. We're in right direction as to where we're going, but I'd still like to see more offenders going to court, but ultimately less offences happening in the first place.
Yeah, thank you. I think we could all agree with that. Increased reporting, increased offenders going to court, increased good outcomes on this. Thank you. Did I see Tracy there? Yes, I just wanted to jump in at the end of that and say that also I think the money that we're investing in independent sexual violence advisors, domestic violence advisors, I think keeps the victim supported, and I think that's part of the story. So it's a real team effort, but I would like to thank John and his team for making it such a priority.
Thank you. Thank you very much, yes. Good. Moving onwards, so I think the next issue,
Supporting victims.
This is about the delays. Councillor Smith, you had a question on this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I know we've touched on this at a panel before, but my point relates to general delays upstream in the criminal justice system, the obvious victim impact and deterrent impact. Delays in the criminal justice system impact the effectiveness of the system, especially the effectiveness of punishment by postponing any sanctions and putting off the punishment of the guilty and the vindication of the innocent. Poor delays exert tremendous tolls on the victims in particular, and many victims' lives are effectively put on hold as they wait their time in court. And the wait can be counted often in months and sometimes in years. So we can't be surprised that increasing numbers are deciding that they're unable to stay the course. So it's really, it's what are we doing to try and improve those prosecution rates? Granted that the Mayor has got no direct powers to get additional resources into the system, but are we taking effective measures to support victims to make sure that they are supported and seen through to a positive outcome?
As I mentioned, the support for victims going through the criminal justice system is really important. The delays are often not of our making, and it is a system that at times doesn't seem fit for purpose, I must say, and must be hugely frustrating for officers who have evidence, who know they want to get the perpetrator off the streets, and yet the system isn't working. I don't know if there's anybody who would like to comment on that, but I do share your frustration, and I'm hoping that with the sentencing bill and that the government will start to understand that you cannot get the outcomes you need with a system that is creaking at the seams by closing county courts, by closing magistrates' courts, by having waiting lists of months and months and delay after delay. It's no good for justice, and it's no good for victims. Wendy.
I'm sure Alison will say this, but she seems to be struggling at the moment. Our work with the LCJB is in train at the moment to ensure that the experience of witnesses, especially doing extra measures such as looking at the video interviewing, working with the LCJB, is in train. But I think, Alison, if you want to talk about the work that's going on there.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just got that your battery's just about to die signal and had to plug it in. We're doing a big review of how we work as a local criminal justice board. Our next meeting in April will be an away day to look at how we best meet the needs of victims and witnesses and how we can improve the court system, because obviously as a partnership we recognise we've all got something to bring to the table, but there are challenges in each of our organisations. And one of the conversations we've already started to have is the use of special measures, because even though we've got this brilliant Section 28 and Section 24 arrangements via the live links, etc., that they are underused, and we think more victims would go through the system earlier if their evidence could be hermetically sealed via the Section 28 live link. They can go on and live their lives, and that information will then be shown when the trial's ready to go forward. So that's just one way that we want to improve the system for those victims. But it does rely on our partners, including policing, to refer people into special measures. And we're also applying pressure to the courts and other partners to accept police requests for special measures, because they don't always accept that. So we've done some work on the application form, the special measures application form, and we will be focusing a lot of our time and resources on special measures.
Well, thank you for that.
Going to costs.
That going into special measures, that was the question I was going to ask a bit later on, so I'll ask it now. Are you confident enough that these measures are robust enough to protect vulnerable witnesses?
Well, if you get people into the special measures, absolutely, because if you're a rape victim, you can give evidence very much sooner, within weeks of the offence happening, and then that's, as I say, hermetically sealed. You can live your life. You never have to think about it again until you find out the outcome of the trial, because that is used in the trial. So it's brilliant. There's screen. There's all sorts of other things you can do with the special measures, but it's about getting permission from the courts to use special measures right at the beginning, because the later you leave it, the less chance you've got that will be agreed, and obviously then you lose victims. The other issues, of course, is the really long waiting list. It's 4 years to get to trial for a rape nowadays. It's not acceptable. All the Nightingale courts are pretty much gone, so we do need to get back on track with the waiting lists.
Yes. Do you think that the criminal justice partners are able to step up to improve this, the victim journey?
Absolutely, the commitment is there, and that's why we're having the away day to really drill down into what we need to do differently. I need to point out that some of our partners, they answer to national masters, so CPS, HMCTS, the court service, they can't say yes locally to things, because nationally they have to abide by the policies that are laid out at that national level, and that is problematic. So the individuals we're talking to are brilliant, they want to make those changes, but then it goes to national decision makers and they say no. So this is our challenge, but we will keep on applying the pressure using the convening power of the mayor. We will bring those partners to the table and try to get some sensible resolution for the people of West Yorkshire.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll now loop back to where we started this question, which was the issue specifically of delays, and in particular, we were furnished with a copy of the article from the Guardian newspaper, of which our Chief Constable was one of the right authors, about the change in the system to allow the police to make decisions on charging rather than the CPS, and the problems that the frustrating problems that are attached to this. I don't know if you would like to go into that in a bit more detail, and I'd be interested in whether the mayor can influence, how much influence you might have on changing this in the way that was set out in that article, which I certainly found quite convincing personally.
Can I say I welcome John's leadership in this space, because it's extraordinary, that glitch in the system. I will do everything I can to support John and his colleagues to get a more sensible approach. But John, I don't know if you want to just talk a little bit about what you've heard back about next steps, if you've been contacted by anyone, if there's a real appetite for it.
I've not been contacted by the Home Office, by the Director of Public Prosecutions, anyone in the CPS or anyone in the criminal justice system. I've seen 3 subsequent letters that were not factually correct that were sent into the Guardian as well. I repeat what Alison alluded to, the Deputy Mayor. We work very well, really well with the local CPS. Some of the finest prosecutors in the country working in the Yorkshire and Humber region, and they've done some amazing work in conjunction with us. And I know that the court system, especially the Crown Court system, is very supportive of everything that goes on. But it's a very simple system. Either the Crown Prosecution Service needs to be given the money and the lawyers to provide advice whilst people are in custody after we've arrested them and we're ready to go, or they need to give some of those charges back to us if they can't do it. And there's just a fear nationally that they don't want to admit that they can't do it, but they physically can't do it. Because the people who are suffering in this is victims, and the people who are most suffering, I suspect, are domestic abuse victims. So I'll say what I said before, and I won't be relatively stereotypical in this. If a man punches his mate in the pub over an argument over football and we arrest him, we can charge him. If he then goes home and punches his wife and splits her face open, it specifically excludes us in the Director of Public Prosecutions from charging that offence. You are not allowed to charge domestic abuse. You're not allowed to charge hate crime. So it's absolutely the wrong way around. So it is a national issue, and I don't know what their problem is with opening it up. They will say, we'll charge people inappropriately or go too far. But at the moment, nothing's happening. They're just getting released on bail. Victims and witnesses, then attrition happens, partners return, relationships start, the support isn't there no matter what we do. And the Mayor's right to mention in person is first because they provide us fantastic support, and we've got some of the best third sector charity support functions in West Yorkshire, which we're very privileged to work with. But we're kind of stuck in between that. We've now got the worst of all the criminal justice system and the history of it. Previously, the police decided on charge. 30 years ago, the CPS took it over. I've got no issue with that. They're the best people to decide on it. But because they haven't got the resources, they're now making us bail everybody. So we're just releasing everybody, putting a file in, and then don't get me going on another issue. Then those rules are coming on top as well. We're being asked for a trial-ready file at the point of advice. And when 40% of those come back to say no prosecution, we've wasted a whole load of time, effort, and money on that. But that's another separate issue. So all I'm trying to say in that article is just not crown court work, not serious high-end work, but in that volume work where victims and witnesses across West Yorkshire are feeling let down by the system, just allow us to put the charge through and prosecute it and trust us that we're not going to get it wrong. I think they're fearful that nationally that we want to prosecute more people and we believe more people should be prosecuted. The magistrates want to hear more people, but the other parts of the system and in between have to deal with all of that work. And that's what my frontline staff would say, is there's people potentially, unconsciously, controlling their workflow out of this. But I repeat, I would never say that about an individual lawyer. I just think the system is stacked up against it. I better leave it at that.
Thank you. That is a very full response, and really, I'm sure that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor are doing all that you can in order to reduce these delays and improve these systems to the extent that you can. And any further reports on this would be most welcome, because it is incredibly off-putting. And this leads me quite neatly into Section 2 and the incidence of repeat domestic abuse offences, which you've indicated is a high priority. And Councillor Tennant-King, you had a question about this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mayor Braden. Could I ask you if the kind of work going along with perpetrators of domestic violence is effective, and if it isn't, why not?
It's such a complicated picture, isn't it, with perpetrators? But we have to intervene at this stage to stop people doing it again. So that's why the CARA programme, for example, is so powerful, because the numbers that you will see in the papers, we have stopped some perpetrators repeating behaviour, and we know that so many victims have instances of domestic violence that then, after a number of these incidences, then end up murdered. So we're also trying to intervene with homicide. So some of these programmes are absolutely life-changing, and I know that Alison has been on the ground looking at some of these outcomes. And Alison, if you want to just add your thoughts.
Yeah, so just to say that there has been a national independent evaluation of the CARA project, which has found that there's some really good outcomes. There's some recommendations in there which we're picking up locally, and that's about pathways in and out, nothing of any substance. But actually, we need to have a way to work with perpetrators, men and women, of these terrible crimes. Otherwise, what you're saying is we'll put you in prison, you'll go out as bad, if not worse, as when you came out. So it's really important that we give people the opportunity to make some different choices. And so CARA is an essential part of the Mayor's offer to our communities.
Thank you both.
But also, just to jump in and say, we also have to stop it happening in the first place, and that's why the work that West Yorkshire Police are running in schools, and also the work we're funding around healthy relationships, and working at universities and colleges about what stalking is, what consent is. All of these, that sort of early intervention work is work you won't see the outcomes of because we've stopped something happening, but I think it's a very worthwhile investment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Sullivan, you had a question on 2.3.1 around the outcomes.
I did indeed, Chair, thank you. It's on page 14 for anyone who's struggling to find these things. It's kind of slightly mushroomed, this question, because it's drifting into 2.32 and 2.33. We've got the 6% at 1.4% increase, so initially we're sort of talking about how have we arrived at those figures as the measurements. And there's a bit further down, we talk about risk of reoffending. Does that mean a risk of any kind of, it said medium or high? Is this referring to an incident happening again, or does medium to high reflect the severity of the alleged assault? And the other thing is, would those figures have been where they are with CARA? You know, CARA's been in operation. Are we saying that these figures have been a lot worse without it? I know it's a bit of a triple whammy there for you.
That's why I'm going to pass it to Wendy. Wendy.
Yeah, so firstly, CARA. Yeah, CARA is the early intervention programme, and from the figures we've seen, we definitely would say that the figures are less than they would have been. Across the country, there is an increase in domestic abuse. A lot of the incidents and crimes have been increasing, and there is a national comparison you can look at. West Yorkshire Police, of course, with their compliance with crime data integrity, does record a lot of domestic crimes. But even with that saying, we can say that with the CARA it would have been reduced. With regard to risk, at each domestic incident, a police officer has a form to fill in, the domestic risk form, and what they will look at is the risk of not just that the actual crime that happened that they are looking at, but also the risk of it happening in the future. And it is this risk that then informs the multi-agency meetings. So it's quite important when looking at risk to understand this informs then the conversations with partners, looking at the perpetrator and that actual crime. So as part of this, CARA looks at what we would call standard risk. So that's that early intervention look, but there is an understanding nationally there needs to be more around the medium to high risk domestic offences, and there has been monies from the MOJ that have been utilised in West Yorkshire to look at programmes to help understanding of this and to work with perpetrators, and this new monies that we're bidding into currently will continue with that work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Moving on to section 3, I think Mr. Lake, your question on page 18 was covered before, so I'll go straight on to Councillor Sharp, who had a question.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's in relation to 3.1.3, the interview that took place in February with the HMIC, yourself there and the VRU. It'd be good to see feedback from that interview if possible, and to know when you might be able to get the feedback. Sorry, I do appreciate that. Adding to your tight schedule of work, about 2 questions, so sorry about that.
Thank you so much. I don't know the date actually, Alison.
Yeah, so I think this has already come out. I think this is the thematic review that was published either early this week or late last week. Unfortunately, West Yorkshire is not named, even though there's some good examples from West Yorkshire. So I think Trevor picked up on the work that we're doing in hospitals in A&E. So we've got the A&E Navigator pilot. That was praised in the report as excellent practice, but West Yorkshire's not named. They haven't named any of the VRUs that they worked with. I think they're trying not to create any upset if they didn't name somebody. But that evaluation has been done, so we can send it out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Moving on to 3.7, and Councillor Kingston had a question on this.
Thank you very much. So this is about diversity and inclusion in representation in the force. I had the good fortune the other day to meet somebody from the Positive Action Department. So I got some direct information from him. Impressively, at a women's event in Halifax, which was a very diverse event, and there were a whole number of police officers there specifically working on recruitment in that context, which was impressive. This officer though told me, and this isn't reflected in these figures, there's no demographic breakdown in the figures, and what he told me was that they're having a lot of success with recruiting from British Asian communities, but they're not having corresponding success recruiting from black communities. So I wondered, is this understood? Are the reasons for this understood? Do we have data about this, and what strategies are envisaged or in place for dealing with that, recruiting more from the black community?
Firstly, it's a priority for us, but it's also about trust with the police force. And you'll know one of the most amazing officers in West Yorkshire Police, Tanya, spoke at my International Women's Day event yesterday, and is a fantastic champion for diversity and for recruitment from the black community. But it's an area of priority, and I know that Alison is leading on this. Alison.
Yeah, so I'm the national lead for race disparities and for equality, diversity and human rights at the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. But I also obviously work closely with West Yorkshire Police on this area. So because there's been a traditional lack of trust and confidence within black communities, so black African and black Caribbean communities for generations, that is the hardest community to reach into when you're trying to develop your recruitment strategy. And so the police have developed what's called the Police Race Action Plan, and recruitment is one of the areas of focus within the plan, so that they're looking at doing a range of things to try to create that bridge back into those black communities where trust has been very low for decades, even predating Steve Lawrence, of course. And so I sit on that board, and one of the things that they're doing is, for example, the College of Policing, who are part of the Police Race Action Plan, are looking at the training that they're doing on historical racism within the police and why black communities feel that the way they do. Because with that understanding, maybe black people feel that actually I can now move forward with policing and join the police. So that sounds a bit simplistic. There's loads of stuff going on. And West Yorkshire have got an icebreaker force, so they're one of the forces that are saying, let us lead nationally on some of this work. They're working really closely with our office. They're doing an amazing job. We're hopeful that more black people will feel able to improve the situation by joining West Yorkshire Police. But, you know, this is work of years. This is not going to turn around. You know, the situation we're in has taken 50, 60 years to get to, and it's going to take Probably, 5-10 years to improve, but we are on the journey. If we didn't do that work now, in 5 and 10 years, you'd be asking the same question, and hopefully that won't be the case.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for those full answers. Moving on to section 4, and looking at 4.4.2, the data shows that there's a current trend of an increase in first-time adult offenders, but the number for young people is decreasing. Is the cause of this increase for adults understood, and what, as the Mayor, are you doing to ensure that this is addressed?
Thank you. I wonder, Wendy, if you want to just talk about drilling down into the figures regarding adult versus young people, just to help us understand the fuller picture.
Yes, we can. So what we talked about was with adult offenders. So what we're looking at is the offences which took place over 2 years ago. So we have the offenders that did the offence, and then it goes to court, and then once they're offended, they do their time, and then when they're released, then they look at the year after to see if they re-offend. So we're looking at quite a bit of time here. So it takes us back to the time of the pandemic and those offences that were taking place there. And we did see West Yorkshire Police did a lot of work with drugs trafficking and drugs offenders at that time, which did tend to be adults. And so we have seen that increase, and that seems to be passing down now into the figures that we have now. But also the investigative work that we've heard about will increase those figures also. With the young offenders, of course, that is a priority for the Violence Reduction Unit to keep these young offenders out of that first time offending, and so all of that work has also been taking place. So we're hoping to see that continue as a reducing trend for them. But that is the understanding of the figures that we have at the moment.
I see.
And certainly in the police and crime plan as well, Chair, early intervention is that priority, and that the intervention around diversion to be with a young person who potentially has committed what could be a crime, and to say we don't necessarily want to criminalise this young person, we want to give them the opportunity to turn their lives around, and that the investment in the diversionary work, I think, is really impressive in West Yorkshire, to keep young people out of the criminal justice system. Once they're in the system, it's so difficult, isn't it, then to stop them, their life from changing completely. So early intervention is the absolute key, and I know that Alison wants to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that, of course, the drugs money that we've got in West Yorkshire now will absolutely positively impact the adults entering the criminal justice system and young people, of course. So it's going to be a huge focus on treatment, but there's also going to be a lot of work done on preventing people who may be have addictions from entering the criminal justice system. So I look forward, again, you won't get that data for 2 years because it's always very late, but we're hoping that will be the case.
I see. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that answers that, and it may.
And obviously, we don't know about the cost of living impact either. We know shoplifting starting to rise. So again, we'll find out in the months to come whether or not adult offending has increased as a result of cost of living.
Yes, of course. Thank you. This may also throw some light on what you said on the next question, the data on the number of offenders referred to drug treatment services, which Councillor Smith was going to ask about.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think we may have. Well, I'll ask the question. I think I may know the answer to it at once. But the data report of the measure showed the number of offenders referred to drug treatment services via liaison and diversion.
You're frozen on screen. You're still frozen and we can't hear anything. Unfortunately, you're still frozen. While the freeze is going on, I have been aware that some things have come up on the chat. And as I said before, I'm completely unable to deal with anything that comes on chat. Oh, and you're back. You've unfrozen.
I'm back.
You're back.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, and we can hear you. Carry on.
Yeah, sorry about that. So the question was around the data report of the measure showing the number of offenders referred to drug treatment services via the liaison and diversion, which seemed a little confused. The trend table on page 24 shows an increase over the years of 81 to 409 in total. But the tables on page 27 show higher figures, which supports me for the quarter. And the comments in 4.5.3 state that this represents a slight decrease for both adults and children compared to the same quarter last year. So I'm just looking for some clarification of what we're looking at and why the difference is really.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, sorry, I see what you mean now. I've made a mistake there, and that's my fault. So the tables below both point to the most recent quarter, which is the October to December quarter. So what they're showing is the referrals into the L&D service, and then break it down by the different districts. And then from those referrals, the number underneath, the formal pathways that they then make for the offender, so that they go into the support services that are linked to L&D. And then the third one is the other pathway contacts, i.e. those are support services, not with the formal referral, but if there's any that are already in place for that offender, they're just highlighting those to them. So we've got the top table is for adults, and those all linked together. The bottom table then is for young people, and the comparison would be with the last quarter in the last performance report, which does show a slight decrease in comparison to the same quarter last year, but that was when liaison and diversion were quite new and were taking quite a few of the old referrals through. So we're now getting to the normal churn of liaison and diversion is how I would interpret it. Does that make sense?
That's providing some clarification. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, I think John Robbins wants to add something.
Yeah, Wendy may not have made a mistake actually. It might be West Yorkshire Police who gave the data, or it might be because the two dates are different. One's to December and one's to September, which might account for the differential. But certainly Wendy's answer was more comprehensive than mine.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to spot these things. Keen eyes. Thank you very much. So, unless there's anything else on the performance review, anyone? And I'll move on to the draft of the supporting victims and witnesses, which we are aware this is a draft. It's obviously not the full report. We'll look forward to seeing the full report in time, or the full statement, strategy statement, I should say, with the amplified ones. But in the meantime, we know that you're looking for comments on this, and we do have, there was the one question which I already asked around special measures, so I don't intend to ask that again. But I know that Mr. Lake has a question on this, 6.3, I believe. Trevor?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. It's reference to 6.3, which is on page. Can't see the page. It's 6.3 on items 6 paper. So you told us there, shared with us some technical information, like the other point, which seem really good ways of dealing with very
plant-based. I couldn't quite make the link from the information we got there. It might be something that come back to us with, I don't know, as to what difference that's going to make to ensure and bring that these facilities and these locations are better utilised.
Shall I answer that one?
Yes, please, Alison. Thank you.
Yeah. So my granddaughter's coming in, but she's it's alright. She's going in a minute. This is the snow, you see. Please go downstairs. No, I'm working. I'm so done.
Scratch the lips.
All right, please go downstairs. Thank you. Sorry about that. So I think I described all this a bit earlier. So the MG2 form is the form that police have to complete at the start of an investigation to highlight the need for special measures. So if that form is not completed appropriately, special measures may not be flagged until much, much later in the court system, at which point the judge may say, or the court may say, we can't implement those special measures. And there are lots and lots of other partners. So the women's centres, for example, who need to be in place to make sure that those live links can be can be used. So that's why the form is being reviewed. In fact, we've got an updated version, and it's gone to the local criminal justice board for them to look at, so that it's much easier for police to be able to identify what needs to change at an earlier juncture.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. And you think that a simple measure like that is sufficient to help?
No, it's not. No, it's not just that. That's one of the big work streams that's underway. It's a whole partnership approach, and we spent quite a lot of the last local criminal justice board talking about live links. In fact, for the whole of the year, we've had a special subcommittee talking about live link use because it's been underutilised. Then people have turned up in court, and the system that needs to know hasn't known that someone needed a live link. So it's been a bit of a mess. So we've had this subgroup going on, which I convened the subgroup using the main soft powers because it was a mess, and it's massively improved. They've just signed a new memorandum of understanding because it had to go to those national partners that weren't playing ball in the first instance about who was going to alert which bit of the system to the need for special measures. But there are other elements of special measures that also needed addressing, and this form was one of those key things. But as I say, we're having an away day, we're breaking down what the victims and witnesses need to get justice, but special measures is seen as one of the key things, and we'll look at every element.
And certainly that visit we had to the SARC, and hearing about a child who used the video, used that video link and that location to get her evidence out, and then she could just continue to grow up, and that could be part of her history, and she doesn't have to live with it going forward. And that's the same for so many victims, that it's just too much, and they want to have therapy and move on, but they know that they're going to be asked to go back to court and so on. We want as many people as possible using these facilities. They're really impressive too. It's good stuff, and really a brilliant investment. We need to widen out that participation.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So, going forward, we didn't actually have any more questions until we get to Appendix 3 on the cost of living impact, where Councillor Smith has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay this time?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Yeah, the question was around if there are any procedures in place to keep in touch with the various providers and check the additional support from the Mayor's Office is sufficient.
It's a good shout, but in the first instance, what was important was to move at speed, to uplift this money so that they could continue in that delivery. And we know that the cost of living crisis is really impacting our voluntary sector. And that's why in parallel, I've also invested in the Mayor's Cost of Living Crisis Fund, £3 million to go to local authorities, to go to charities and to those supporting the most vulnerable in eating and also mental health. So I'm hoping that would also provide a buffer. As your question about outcomes, I wonder, Alison, if you could share with us how we're addressing that sort of understanding the impact of that uplift?
Yeah, so obviously providers were struggling to deliver their contracted outputs because the cost of living increase was impacting in the way described in the paper. Staff were leaving, costs were going up, so money that should have been spent on service delivery was being spent on internal costs, much like you and your households and your businesses, exactly the same way. So in order to deliver what people are contracted to do, we really needed to have those conversations with our funders about giving us that uplift. We don't have any material changes to agreed outcomes. Obviously, we've got contracts with each of our providers, and they've all got metrics that they have to deliver against. So none of those have been adversely impacted at the moment, and that's massively because of the goodwill of the staff and the voluntary sector organisations, but also because we were promising them the conversation with our funders to get them this uplift. So now that they've got the uplift, obviously there's a lot of bonhomie coming back to us, and we have consequently not seen any impact, but we would have done had we not been able to make this this change to their funding.
Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess it's a case of just watch the space, isn't it? Just see how things develop. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments from anybody or questions on this draft strategy? Nothing anyone wants to say. And
Right. Just a quickie on these ones. There's a reference to a delivery plan to the side. I appreciate it's draft, but will that come back to us in due course when the strategy has been finalised?
It will. Yeah, that's right. It will. It's a draft, yeah. Thank you. And is there anything in the chat that we should be aware of? Because as I've said before, I can't actually look at the screen, look at my papers, and monitor the chat.
Nothing that I can see, Councillor Godfrey.
Nothing there, no. Okay, well that was very quick. I'm sure we all look forward to seeing this in full in due course. It's obviously very necessary, but as the points were made before, while there are still parts of the criminal justice system that are experiencing such long delays, it's really hard to see that victims will get the full support that they deserve to expect. But we've thought about that in some detail. So I'll go straight on to item 7, the Mayor's response to any current issues. Okie dokie, thank you. As I mentioned in my opening remarks regarding the sad murders, obviously that's a current and live issue. I'd also like to just mention the Road Safety Partnership Board. You'll have seen on the news the welcome update from the board about road safety cameras and the uplift there. Really good news, and welcome to our new colleagues on this call who are part of that team. And that's Neil Hudson, Vision Zero Policy Manager, and Ben Sonny Williams, Policy Assistant. So really pleased to have an extra capacity. And also Deputy Mayor West Yorkshire Police were invited to a school in Leeds to meet the Speak Up Leeds campaign group. And the campaign was inspired by the Black Boy Joy movement, created to show positive images of happy black boys and to encourage them to speak up about their mental health, and a great chance for the young people to speak directly with the Chief Constable about policing. And having seen the video that Alison shared as well, I really would encourage you to look at it on YouTube. It is so uplifting. The idea that just because you are a black boy, that you should not be able to be joyous and to be happy in your life because of racism and people's perception of black boys. So it was really good, and I really do recommend you have a look at it. That's it for now, Chair. So thank you. Thank you for that. Any questions to the Mayor on that particular pieces of information? I shall certainly look forward to looking at that video. I haven't had a chance yet, but I shall do. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I think we touched on before, whether any pressure can be put on the government to give local councils more powers to enforce traffic offences and all. The Chief Constable was in support of that, whether there's been any conversations or whether it's still a welcome idea.
Alison? Yeah, so what's changed is that the West Yorkshire Camera Safety Partnership has now come up with their own strategy, because we've been waiting for the government, the DFT one, to be updated for a very, very long time. So we've updated our own, and that now gives local authorities and local people an influence over where speed cameras are put, where the mobile speed cameras, we're going to buy 4 more vans, which will be shared across the whole of West Yorkshire, on top of the 7 we've already got, so there'll be 11 vans, and we're going to make sure that we're going to be listening well to local authorities and to the local people about what the issues are for them, and then putting those additional measures in place, which we couldn't do before. It was all based on how many crashes have there been, how many people have died or been injured. So much bigger, wider conversation. We've obviously got the PSPOs, which local authorities have led on in Bradford. So the whole of Bradford is a public spaces public space protection order, that's it, and that was about speeding and antisocial use of motor vehicles, and if more local authorities would seek PSPOs in partnership with West Yorkshire Police, that would be brilliant, because then we could, off the back of that, do much more stringent work together to stop antisocial use of motor vehicles. We've also, of course, the Mayor has given £550,000 to all 5 local authorities to enhance the off-road capacity, so that we've got more people going out on motorbikes, stopping young people, putting their lives at risk. That's a brilliant enhancement to the monies that the Mayor gives to all local authorities. So we're working close with local authorities already, but obviously if you give more powers to local authorities, then where's the money to actually help local authorities to be able to deliver that enhanced power that they've got? So I would be very happy for local authorities to do more, but my experience is that it's always on top of the money they've already got, because they've already got powers for parking, for example, and there's a lot of frustration locally that they're not always able to meet the expectations of local people. So yes is the answer. It would be great if we could do that, but it has to be followed by massive investment from central government, which I don't see coming any day soon.
So thank you. Can I just have a quick follow-up, Joe?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we're all acutely aware of the gap between powers and actual enforcement and resources, or lack of, with local authorities. But yeah, we appreciate that. Just as any, this might seem like a silly question, but has any thought been given to investment into some sort of more low-tech deterrence? I'm thinking, I've seen other authorities use things like pop-up cutouts of policemen with speeding guns and police cars even, and things like that. Is that ever been talked about or considered?
Not that I'm aware of, but obviously we're open to anything that works. I know some people have got bird boxes that look like cameras. I'm really happy to discuss innovative ideas to stop people dying on the roads. I know that Bradford recently bid for some monies to do some innovative stuff in their borough. Maybe Paul Sullivan will be telling us about that. But we're really open to doing whatever needs to be done to save lives, because between 13th of December and the meeting we had on the 6th of March this week, 17 people had died on our West Yorkshire roads and 330 have been seriously injured. This is a pandemic. This is a shocking reality that we're facing, not just in West Yorkshire but nationally. People are dying unnecessarily because they're driving irresponsibly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sure any suggestions from anybody would be most welcome, and you can put them in writing. And we will have a further discussion on this at the next meeting on the 21st of April, when road safety is on one of the reports on the agenda. And we'll be all interested to know that. I've attended the service at Leeds Minster in the past, which is a special service every year for family and friends of those who have died on the roads. And I know what an appalling but moving but tragic event that is for so many people. And
we really do need to resort to it, as you said. So, moving on, number 8, item 8, publish key decisions. Nothing, no one got anyone's anything to say on that. Councillor Sullivan.
Was just on the previous thing, in Cullingworth we have a sort of scarecrow festival, and as I was driving into Cullingworth, there was a scarecrow dressed as a policeman with a gun, radar gun, and it actually made me check my speed. I wasn't speeding, but just in that nanosecond, which is what makes it count. So it might not be. Some people may think Anthony's suggestion was frivolous, but it's not. It can actually work. Thank you.
I think John's got a comment to make about that, Chair.
Yes? Sorry, did you say you had a comment to make? Chief Constable.
I'll say this very tentatively, and my apologies to colleagues online, police officers or policemen and police women. We are all at risk of perpetuating unconscious biases. We recruit 50% of our workforce is women, so I would welcome cutouts of police officers on the side of roads and a whole host of other things. But please, I apologise if I just want to give that feedback in a non-confrontational way.
No need to apologise at all. Quite right. And yes, low-tech solutions definitely can be ones that work very well, like those ones on the motorway where it says my mum works here. Those are very good, where there's some workforce in the road. Certainly, I think it's been shown that those result in drivers slowing down, which is obviously helpful. So, if that's it on that topic,
Councillor Arley's got his hand up, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I just didn't spot you.
It's just a previous one. Alison mentioned regarding wanting to local authorities. How much is that again, Alison? Don't mind me telling me.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Now, you mentioned about the monies that's given to local authorities for flood binding and tackling enforcement.
Oh, £550,000 was given to the 5 local authorities. So I don't know how much Wakefield got. I think Bradford got 130,000. Leeds got nearly 200,000 of that. So it got spread out proportionately based on, I think, population.
And is that in terms of enforcement, tackling, off-road rules, motorbike, that kind of stuff?
So the deployment of those resources was a partnership between your community safety partnership and West Yorkshire Police. So I know in some places, in Leeds for example, they recruited a sergeant and a couple more, paid for a few more police officers to be able to use motorcycles. I think they bought some off-road bikes in another bit of West Yorkshire. So a variety of different things depending on what the identifying need was in that locality.
Can you get us an amount how much they filled up, please, don't mind?
Yeah, Ian's here, so he'll tell you when we'll go off and find out. He hasn't got the figures to hand, but yes, definitely. It's gone to your CSP.
So he'll let you know if we finish the meeting before that's found out.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I just add that the leathers themselves for our police officers are also very expensive. So you might have a bike, but then you've got to find the money for the leathers for your colleague to ride the bike. So these things are costly, but we want to make sure that our officers are safe. So I think it's a really good investment.
Definitely. Thank you. Okay, obviously there's going to be a lot of discussion about this at the next meeting. To make sure to put aside enough time, because it's a subject on which we can all participate. But going on now to item 8, key decisions, I don't think anyone's got anything to say about that. Councillor Ali, is that a legacy hand?
Sorry, I'll take that off, sorry.
Thank you. So item 9, the agreed actions. I didn't have anything more to say about that. Everything seems to be going ahead. Oh, Ms. Fleck.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's in relation to the 7.12.3. Halfway down. The agenda plan include a report on serious RTAs within the next 6 months. I think we have it coming to the next meeting. I've got it right. We've got two new colleagues, Neil and Sonny, joining the meeting today. Going back into the detail of the performance report, but clearly within that performance report, it was showing the increase that's already happened this year. Nearly this financial year, it's a KPI to reduce those numbers. They've gone up. Alison just got some figures from December to March, which showed in the worst position I suspect she projected through. So it was really just a heads up on the colleagues that prepared this report. It's you please see in that report some detailed figures, trajectories, because whilst I understand strategically the aim of Vision Zero is to get to zero, but I think realistically we have to look at the scale of this problem. And would like to see kind of your plan of how is that going to happen over a period of time, what's the trajectory I can be looking at, realistically trying to achieve interventions.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Vision Zero strategy is being developed, so our strategy, which will include all the work that we're doing, and each local authority is doing their own individual strategy. So we'll try and capture what activities we're undertaking at a local authority level and how we're bringing all that together strategically for the next meeting. So I'll talk to Neil outside of the meeting to make sure that we can try and capture that as well as possible. It's not always easy to do a trajectory because obviously outliers always happen, but we'll do our best.
Is that okay? Yeah. Right.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, isn't it, if you invest so much time and effort into something to have some targets that you're going for to share and fully understand that under certain circumstances that may be achieved or not, depending on macro factors. But I think it's important for us to have something to look at and say, okay, you can see what your own is going to be, and then we can have a discussion about it. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you very much. So going on to item 11, complaints received by the panel. The report sets out there have been no complaints recorded since the last panel meeting, which is good, but obviously if anything in the future should come forward, it would be good to have immediate knowledge of that so that we're able to deal with it and be informed appropriately. So thank you. Item 12, any other business? Does anyone have any other business? No? So, someone's raised their hand. Let me see, who is it? Chief Constable.
I'm aware that there's some national reports yet to come out around policing in the next month or two on a whole host of different things. We are part of UK policing, of course we are, but I just asked the panel members to reflect upon everything they've seen over the last year or 2 years or 5 years, however long you've been in the panel in West Yorkshire, and just not fall into the belief that everything you see in the media is everything happening in every police force across the country. Having said that, we do make mistakes, individual officers and organisations make mistakes, and of course we're subject to investigative power processes as well. I think you'll understand what I'm saying to you. It's just please don't follow all of the media narrative that all of policing is bad. It's not, because we need advocates and positive advocates of policing, because there's so much that's good in it. And I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kingston.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm going back to recruitment because I remembered something else that I was told anecdotally by a different friend whose son was in the degree apprenticeship scheme at the police. And in his group there were 9 people that began the scheme and 8 of them had dropped out because of overload of work and lack of support, he says. I don't know anything more about that. This is anecdotal, and I just wondered, is it possible for us to have some that somebody look at that and tell us some figures about how successful is the degree apprenticeship scheme at actually retaining people?
Can I answer that one? I'm really happy to talk to West Yorkshire Police to get some figures for you, but I meet the degree apprenticeship provider and the DHET provider quarterly, and one of the questions I asked them is about retention, and retention is extremely good and has got better as the degree has matured and people have felt more comfortable in the detail of that expectation. So I would be very shocked and surprised if that was actually the case, and so we'll look to get some data, but the information I have been asking for and getting from the college, from the university, Trinity University, has been extremely positive.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I was surprised to hear that, because you've reported about it in the past and said that retention is very high. So it would be interesting if you can go back and listen and find out, what exactly this referred to and any further details, so that we can really look at it and perhaps let Alison know that separately, as and when, don't wait till the next meeting, so that she can have a clearer understanding of what has actually happened, because it seems to go right against all the reports that we've ever had on this, which is very positive.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, any other business? Councillor Kingston, I imagine that's your hand. Yes, thank you. Anyone else? In which case, we are ahead of ourselves. This is the first time this has ever happened. We've got half an hour in hand. Maybe we should go to Teams more often. No, I don't mean that, because it's been really quite difficult for all of us. Thank you very much for staying the course. It's not an easy situation when there are so many people online, and we're juggling documents and trying to find this, that, and the other. So thank you. But the next meeting is Friday the 21st of April, and that will be in the old courtroom in Wakefield. And I should also say that as I'm going to be the Lord Mayor of Leeds from May the 24th, this will be my last meeting for the moment anyway, as chair of the Police and Crime Panel. So if you arrive in time, there might just be some cake.
And thank you for your service, Councillor, for keeping us all in check for so long. And you are going to be an amazing mayor, I've no doubt, and I look forward to working with you.
Oh, thank you, and me too. Because I'll see you again on the 21st of April anyway, and let's hope that weather allows us to make the journey. So, goodbye for now, everybody.
All the best.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, bye.